Hello, NFL fans, and thank you very much for joining us. We have delighted to have our special guest on today, Miami Dolphins super fan and Miami Dolphins fan of the year 2020, Big E. Thank you very much for joining us again today. How are you
Tom,
doing?
thank you. I'm doing great, and I appreciate you allowing me to join your show. And I know folks don't know it, but it's the UK fans will know that it's 11 o'clock in the UK right now, even though it's about 6 o'clock in the States. So I appreciate you you staying up so late and us having this talk tonight.
Oh, no, we really appreciate it. And obviously, we got a chance to speak to you before the season and get your sort of take on what the season might look like for the Dolphins. Obviously, a new head coach. Obviously, we talked a bit about Tua, which we'll come back to in a while. And we obviously pinned you down and said, well, if the Dolphins make the playoffs, then you have to come back on. And obviously they have, and we'll certainly get onto that. Unfortunately, it was at the expense of our team, the Patriots. But yeah, we're so glad to obviously have you back on. And obviously, the first question I'd like to put to you is, so how does it feel? 2016, the last time the Dolphins were in the playoffs. So how does it feel to be back with the big ones?
I will tell you, I don't remember how it felt in 2016 when the Miami Dolphins last made it to the playoffs, but I will tell you it feels great. You know, there's 30 teams in the National Football League. Only 14 of them now make it to the postseason. Every one of those 14 teams has a 0-0 record right now in the playoffs. And it's just great to be part of that. It's great to be part of that conversation. So, this is ultimately when you start the season, you want your team to make it to the playoffs. And then what happens after that, anything goes. But you start the year off saying, this is where we want to end up. And this team is here. So I'm very excited about it.
Absolutely. And obviously you were at the game last week. How did that feel? Obviously very, very intense as a Patriots fan watching that score happen at the same time. And obviously so close, just field goals. So how did it feel actually being there at that game?
I will say that it was stressful. I say it was stressful because 95% of the fans that were in attendance were Miami Dolphins fans. And we all knew how important this game was. And we knew how important the narrative would have been had the Dolphins not won that game. But then also having Skyler start the game and be able to finish that game, there were a lot of question marks against one of the top defenses in the National Football League by the New York Jets. So it was nerve-wracking for a little while there. And then I will say, out of all the home games that I've been to this season, and I've been to 10, that was my 10th game, I would say the fans were probably more into screaming on, when it was third down for the Jets, and everybody was getting up out of their chairs. I think because we all knew what was at stake. And so I lost my voice almost by the end of that game. And there were some games during the season that I was fine. And I maybe was a little hoarse, but I had not lost my voice. So I think everybody really got into it. And then once we made it to the playoffs, well, first of all, we were there at the end of the game. They purposely were not showing the score of the Bills versus Patriots game per, I guess, the suggestion of Coach McDaniel. So I was watching it on my phone. I actually had a Red Zone on my phone in the stands, and I was keeping everybody around me up to date with what was going on. But as the score was kind of going back and forth, and then once the Bills started running away with it, like you just knew this was our time. This was our time to be able to make it. And this reminds me of a couple of years ago when the Bills had gone through a drought for many seasons of not making it to the postseason. But then their last game of the season was against the Miami Dolphins at Hard Rock Stadium. And I think it was the Ravens versus the Bengals. the Bills had just beaten us. That was a game, I think, also that Jarvis Landry got kicked out of the game because he was involved in a fight. But they beat us, and they had to wait for the outcome of that other game. And the outcome of the other game, I think it was the Ravens had scored, and which put them on top, and it allowed the Bills to go into the postseason. So it's kind of that similar feeling of, all right, now everybody else did their job, and we are now in. So it was a great feeling going home this whole week so far. It's kind of been a different high than what we've had all year because we're now in the playoffs.
Yeah, nice. It's fantastic. Obviously, the Dolphins, obviously such a huge team and so massive in the UK, the fan support of the Dolphins over here as well. So it'll be fantastic for those fans, the UK fans, to see some playoff football that's obviously been missing for a few years. So what I want to do is sort of get you to talk me through how the season has gone. It's obviously been a bit of an up and down season for a few reasons for the Dolphins. So talk to me about how the season's gone from your fans' perspective.
I can't remember the last time we were on such a roller coaster as the Miami Dolphins fans went through this season. And you remember how we started 3-0, the first win against the Patriots, as you'll remember. Then the come from behind win against the Ravens, and then the last minute win, against the Bills. I mean, to go 3-0 to start the season, we were on top of the world. I mean, even as fans, and I know this, and I was like this too. We started kind of holding our chest up high. We were banging our chest. We were kind of getting cocky, right? Because a lot of things pointed to some great things, especially when you talk about like Tua and his connection with Waddle and his connection with Hill, and the way that the offensive line was playing. And then, of course, that Cincinnati Bengals game happened, and and then the concussion that everyone saw, I think, around the world, because I think it was primetime television, and that's when kind of sadness came into play, and then we had Teddy start, and then he was out after the first season against our first series with the Jets. Then the next game it was against the Vikings, and then we had Skyler start, but then he couldn't finish the game. He hurt himself, and Teddy came in. So that next couple of games where it was the losing streak, that was tough. It was disappointing, to say the least. But then we get Tua back, right? We go on this 4-game win streak, I want to say, or 5-game win streak, and to see him being able to put up the numbers that he put up against the Bears, what he put up against the Lions, and just being able to win that game too against the Steelers, even though I know we had some Noah Igbinoghene sighting at the end of that game that sealed that game. It felt very good. And then, then the last couple of games, again, the losing started taking place. And I was showing my daughter this evening, actually. I said, I want you to see something. And I showed her the injury report that just came out today, where it has the Dolphins with about 20 guys on the injury report, and it has the Bills with 5. And I said, this has been the story of the 2022 Miami Dolphins. Every single game, our injury report has been like this. And, and no one wants to talk about it. And I know sometimes it sounds like excuses, but when you are decimated at injuries, where you're on your 4th or 5th tackle, and you're on your 2nd and 3rd string quarterback, the challenges are going to be there. The challenges are going to happen. So I think that's kind of what led to, a lot of the losses that we saw. And then we won the last one. The most important one, I think, was that last one to get us into the playoffs. And now anything can happen. Anything can happen starting from today, starting from this weekend.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And obviously a big part of it that you've mentioned there, Tua, obviously want to have a few words on him and his play this season. We obviously spoke before the season, and you were a bit sat on the fence, let's say, on Tua. So you weren't Tua stan, but you believed in him, that he was going to be a part of it, not necessarily the part, but a part of what was going to be good for the Dolphins this season. So how do you stand on Tua? Obviously, we'll talk a little bit of injuries and things in a second, but on his play of what you've seen, where do you stand now on Tua?
I actually, on his play, strictly talking about his play, I'm very, very encouraged. I said at the beginning of the season, I think I said this on multiple podcasts, is that if we give him the opportunity with a decent offensive line, not the best, but not ranked 32nd, give him a decent offensive line, give him some weapons at wide receiver, which we did, right, with Tyreek Hill. Also give a running game, which I think we saw an improvement in the running game when you added Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Let's see what he can do. And just when he was on the field with those guys, I thought that he proved that he could be a top 5, top 10 quarterback in the National Football League. So I'm very encouraged with what I saw when it comes to his production when he was actually on the field. But then there's the injury piece, right? And I think a lot of people who have grown to love Tua start asking those questions about, first of all, is he going to continue in the National Football League, right? Because you just never know what these concussions are going to do to him from the long-term perspective. But secondly, what happens if we prepare, week 1 of the 2023 season for Tua to be our quarterback, and then we worry about him going down again and this happening again to him? What do we do as an organization in that perspective? But I mean, you cannot love the way somebody speaks, the way somebody leads more than you can with Tua, because the guy, he's just such a likable individual, and you want to see him succeed, and you want him to be healthy. His body just hasn't allowed it right now. Does that mean that can change? Absolutely, it can change. He can spend the next 5 or 10 years maybe not have a concussion again, right? But it just so happens this year he's had 2, maybe 3, maybe 4. Who knows if he had another one in one of the other games? But I'm up on Tua. I am. But we also have to think. What is his long term going to look like with this organization, with his health?
Yeah, because it is both of those things, isn't it? You've got to think of the player himself and also the impact it is going to have on the Dolphins from sort of a selfish point of view for the Dolphins. But you've got to think it's no good with all the building around Tua and then him getting hit again in the head or getting knocked to the ground again. And then all of a sudden you're into your backups straight away. And that could happen in preseason. It could happen 2 games into the season. And then all of a sudden, you've got problems. I mean, obviously, since the games that Tua hasn't played, I mean, the record can't be good for those games.
I think they're 1-6, 1-6 or 1-5, and that one win we got was the one that we needed in order to get into the playoffs.
So, and what have you seen from obviously from Teddy Bridgewater and Skylar Thompson? If both players were fit, who would you want to see play on Sunday?
That is a great question. I will tell you that Teddy Bridgewater has some advantages. He's a big-bodied person. He doesn't get rattled, I think, as often as a potential rookie quarterback might, because he's just been there so often. He's taken so many hits, and also he has a fairly strong arm. And I'll take everybody back to that Cincinnati Bengals game when Tua got knocked out, and he threw the ball like 50 or 60 yards down the field, and Tyreek made an incredible juggling catch at like the 5 or 10 yard line. So, plus, not to mention, when he came in during the Minnesota Vikings game after Skylar got hurt, ended up throwing for like 340 or 330 yards. So he's talented. I think where we have the challenge with Teddy, is he's also injury prone. Yes, he's had the concussions before, which is why he got knocked out of the Jets game, but he's got some other things, and he's got that pinky issue right now. And if you don't have a good pinky on your throwing hand as a quarterback, you're gonna run into some trouble, because you can't really grip the ball and you can't throw it like you were used to or usually are able to throw. As for Skylar, I think he's very raw. And I think, we saw in the preseason, as Miami Dolphins fans, we saw a quarterback who made really good decisions, who rolled out of the pocket, was not afraid to run when he needed to, but also he could make plays up as he went, as some other plays may have broken down. And that was really impressive to me in the preseason. He ended up, if I remember correctly, the best preseason quarterback in the National Football League. That's great, because you want your team, you want your team to have players that do the best, but also you also have to recognize when he was in, he's probably going in against third stringers and fourth stringers. And one thing with him, first of all, the last game against the Jets was the first time that a backup quarterback came in for Tua and actually started and finished a game. All the games prior, when Teddy would start, he wouldn't finish, or when Skyler would start, he wouldn't finish because of injury. So we got our first opportunity to see Skyler start and finish a game. What I liked about Skyler last week was that he didn't make any mistakes. He maybe had one or two bad throws, and also he maybe held on to the ball a little bit. But I have a feeling Coach McDaniel was in his ear or started out the game plan saying, "Listen, kid, we just don't want you to throw interceptions. Make good decisions. If you don't have a target, or if they're, all over the receivers," which the Jets coverage was very tight on the Miami Dolphins receivers. I think he just said, throw it away, throw the ball away, and I saw him hesitating a lot. I think that may have been because he didn't want to make those mistakes that Coach McDaniel told him to. So it's I know he's probably going to end up being the starter this coming weekend. So, in Skyler we trust. Just got to hope that he learned from last week's game, maybe got a little confidence after that. And we'll see how he does against a defense. It's a very, very good defense, but I think the Jets defense is probably a notch better than the Bills defense is.
Yeah. And we also talked before the season about Coach McDaniel, which you were really high on before the season. So what have you seen from Coach McDaniel this season?
I still like him a lot. I really do. And, through the positives and through the ebbs and flows of the wins and losses, I still think he is a great head coach. I think he's got a lot of learning to still do. I think in some instances you found the game plan was, well, we're going to run it and we're going to be successful with the run. And then for one reason or another, the team would go away from that when it wasn't necessary to do that. In some cases, we were very predictable on third down, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2. We would throw the ball when we were doing very well on the run game. The other thing that I think that he has learned throughout the season is that he's got to be quicker with his decision making. And I think we even heard him a couple of times at different press conferences talk about, I'm not quick enough. I haven't, that's on me. That's my fault. I haven't done that. But I like the way that he speaks to his team. I like how he addresses the media. I like the playfulness, even though I will tell you that there are some fans that say it should be 100% business. There shouldn't be any playfulness, because this is serious. And I'm thinking to myself, these guys need to be loose. They need to go out there, have some fun, and they're going to learn. You're going to learn a lot when you're enjoying yourself and you're enjoying what you do. And I think that's the direction that Coach McDaniel has gone. And so I know that there was some talk before the Jets game about if he had not won that one, that they would consider, firing him and moving on. I never believed that, to be honest with you. No. I think that came from one reporter, and I don't think that was based on a conversation with anyone inside the building. I think that was more of an opinion. But I think, again, too, the other piece to it, and I was talking to somebody else about this the other day, is if you look at all of the injuries and you take those off the board and you have a healthy team, how many wins would this Dolphins team have actually had instead of 9? Is it possible we would have had 12 wins, as I predicted at the beginning of the season? Who knows? We're just doing a guessing game. But I think that the way that the Coach McDaniel and his team of coaches had planned out games, I think if you would have had a healthy roster, things would have ended a little differently. And you can't make excuses, right? Because you got to work with the guys that you got. But that's why I think he deserves more of a chance than just, all right, one and done and you're out.
Yeah, and who would you say has been other standout players for the Dolphins this season, other than obviously Tyreek Hill has been a massive player for the Dolphins and Jalen Waddle, but who else maybe unsung for the Dolphins?
A lot of people don't talk about Christian Wilkins. He's not a guy who's going to get you 10 sacks in a season, but I will tell you one of the strengths of the Miami Dolphins defense right now has been their run stopping. And I think that has a lot to do with Christian Wilkins. and he's coming up for a contract year, and I think they've got to keep this guy. He's been improving every season, and he doesn't get his name noticed. He doesn't get called as much, but he does his job, and he does it so well. I'll tell you that Jamon Holland, I think he's done tremendous. He's another one, and I'm talking on the defensive side of the ball, even though I know the defense has probably been the Achilles heel of this team so far this season in many situations. But I think those guys have really made a difference. I think they're leaders in their positions, they're leaders in their group, and I think they're great on our team.
Yeah, and so looking at for this Sunday then in the playoff game, obviously the Dolphins going into this as huge underdogs now, mainly due to the fact that obviously it's going to be starting either Teddy Bridgewater, Skylar Thompson at quarterback. Do you feel there is a chance for the Dolphins to win? And if so, what needs to happen on Sunday for the Dolphins to win?
It's so interesting because if you were to ask 100 Miami Dolphins fans this question, probably 98, well, I wouldn't say 98. I'll be a little more conservative. 80 out of 100 would probably say the Dolphins don't have a chance. And I think that's because when you look at, the high-powered offense that the Bills bring, they're very talented. Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the National Football League. Stephon Diggs, one of the best wide receivers in the National Football League. But I'm of the belief that you've got to play the game before you determine who's going to win the game and who's going to lose the game. Yeah, the Dolphins are picked to lose by 13, so it's pretty easy for people to say the Dolphins don't have a chance. But I think there's a couple of things that the Dolphins can do that can actually help them. Number one, keep the ball in our offense's hands. That means we're going to be running a lot. That means that we're not going to be making those quick 50-yard passes, to get the offense off of the field. Because I think that the more you can keep Josh Allen off the field, the better you can be, right? So I think if Raheem Mostert can't go, we got this Jeff Wilson guy, and he's really great, right? He's had some really strong games, especially not just with the Dolphins, but when he was with the 49ers. Salvin Ahmed looks like he's going to be the second running back if that's the case. And he's been known to have some good games in the past as well. And then two, don't forget, one of the plays that I really loved during the Jets last weekend was the jet sweep, where you take one of the wide receivers from their wide receiver spot, run them behind the quarterback, and then they run the other way. We have some of the fastest wide receivers in the National Football League. We can find ways to do that. So I think that's going to be one of the ways that the Dolphins win. But here's the other way. When the Bills do have the ball, you've got to have that spy on Josh Allen. You can't let him run because he will kill you. This is a do or die game for us, and it's the same for them. And he will use his legs to extend plays or to get first downs. You've got to prevent him with that. And here's the other thing. The Dolphins have been known for using that cover zero blitz where they bring the entire house to the quarterback. It hasn't worked very well this season. They haven't gotten to the quarterback, and then the quarterback throws to one-on-one coverage on the outside, and we don't have Byron Jones back there right now. And Xavier Howard, I know he's playing through injury right now, and good for him that he's out there. But I know that that's not easy for him to cover one-on-one, especially if he's going to be, which he probably would be, the one covering Stephon Diggs. We've got to allow those front four to get some pressure on the quarterbacks. Jalen Phillips can get pressure on a quarterback. Raekwon Davis, he can get pressure on the quarterback. So, but the other piece too is we got to have that spy on Josh Allen, and I think that's going to end up being how the Dolphins can beat the Bills. I'm not saying that that's necessarily going to happen, right? Because I am realistic about the strengths of both teams, and based on our injury situation, the Bills have a healthier team and a stronger team right now. But I'm not saying it's a definite loss for the Dolphins, because otherwise, why even make them play on Sunday if you're going to say that it's an automatic loss for them?
Yeah, I just hope that the game plan, which you talked about earlier, I think that was the Patriots' game plan as well, as keeping Josh Allen off on the sideline. So we decided to just allow 2 kick return touchdowns, and that was the easiest way to keep him on the sideline. But unfortunately, that cost us 14 points at the same time. So there you go. Hopefully,
and that was the difference in the game. That was the difference in the game for you guys.
It really was. It really was. But the special teams, that's obviously what killed the Patriots. Obviously, the Dolphins hopefully have better special teams than we did. So looking at the playoff picture outside of the Dolphins, which team in the AFC do you think is the strongest team going into the playoffs?
I like the Kansas City Chiefs. I always have. I think as long as you got Patrick Mahomes back there, anything could be possible. And again, he's one of those guys that maybe you have play number one designed and drawn up, and then something happens and the play ends up breaking down. He's going to find an opportunity to get a first down somehow. And sometimes he'll throw it 35 yards down the field and still get you, even more yards than the original play was going to get. So I really think that they are kind of the cream of the crop within the AFC. Also, I give credit to the Cincinnati Bengals. I think Joe Burrow, I think he's special, and his connection with Jamar Chase has been pretty amazing. And not to mention, they got a pretty nice running back there in Cincinnati as well. So I think when you look at that 1, 2, 3 punch for them, I think the Bengals are definitely top. And you can't leave the Bills out either. Again, a lot of respect for the team, a lot of respect for that roster that they have right now. But they've got to play on Sunday, and we just got to beat them. That's all.
That's it. That's all. That's all. And what about the NFC side of things? Which team has impressed you on the NFC side?
So there's been a couple, and I think it's easy to go to the Philadelphia Eagles, because the Eagles kind of outpaced everyone, right? But I'm curious to know what the status is of Jalen Hurts, and if he's injured, or if I haven't really been paying as much attention this week if he's been practicing or not. But he's a game changer, and he's one of those guys that he's taken his bumps, but this season everything was put together. And their defense is something special as well. So I think they're at the top. Minnesota Vikings, I don't think they're as good as people think. I think some of their wins were probably lucky, which in some cases were helpful to the Miami Dolphins. So we'll take it all the time. But I think, and then I think of the Cowboys as well. But I don't know, Cowboys are the Cowboys, and then of course too, you can never count Tom Brady out. But I think I think he might have an early exit this year. We will see. We will definitely find out.
And speaking of obviously Tom Brady, what do you see him doing? What do you see Aaron Rodgers doing at the end of this season?
I actually think Tom Brady is going to make a decision. Either he's going to stay with the Buccaneers or he's going to retire. That's what I think. I don't think he's going to jump to another team where he has to start all over again, and then he's got to hope that he's going to be able to get that team to the postseason. Usually that's like a 1 to 2 year process. So he'd have to make a commitment to be able to do that. I just don't know if he's willing to do that. Now, of course, I say that, and I think I said it 10 years ago that I thought he was going to retire, and here he is 10 years later playing football. So the guy is I don't know if he's sleeping in cryo chambers when he goes to sleep at night, but he's definitely got some fountain of youth that he's drinking from, and good for him. And as far as Aaron Rodgers is concerned, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Aaron Rodgers, because he may just step away from the game too. You could tell he was really frustrated after that loss to the Lions, which I actually really liked the Lions at the beginning of this year. I thought they were going to make some moves, and they almost got there. They were one game away from getting to the postseason. But Aaron Rodgers, again, it would be hard to see him away from the Packers. But we'll see. We'll see what happens. He may decide he wants to retire as well. Who knows?
Yeah, and talk of Aaron Rodgers, could you see him at the Jets?
I hope so. And I say that because I say this carefully, but I have seen a drop off in his skill set over the years. I don't think anyone can say that Aaron Rodgers of 2022 is at the same level of the Aaron Rodgers as he was in 2016 or 2017. There's definitely been a change in his play. So I kind of hope, that he'd be following in Brett Favre's footsteps, because Brett Favre went to the Jets after too and did exactly what I just said. He had a horrible season. I wouldn't say horrible, but he was not as good as he was, because you know, once you get to a certain level in your career, and now again, I could be totally wrong, and he could end up taking, you know, his next team to the Super Bowl, which I hope would not be the Jets, which you hope would not be the Jets, but who knows? You know, who knows?
Because I think obviously the AFC East has sort of become a bit of a powerhouse division. I mean, it was always talk before the season it was going to be the AFC West, where all the teams were going to be coming out of there into the playoffs, but it's ended up obviously being the AFC East that's pushing. And having watched some Jets games this season, especially obviously against the Patriots, they're just a quarterback away. The defense, as you've said, is top 5 easily. They've got skilled receivers. Once they get Breece Hall back as well, they're a competent quarterback away from being very competitive, which is a bit scary from a Patriots fan perspective, really, because we could be finding ourselves at the basement of that if they don't get something sorted out in the off season. So, what's your opinion on that?
So I actually I thought that the New York Jets, their main goal was to run the ball. And, you know, once they found Breece and he was just having the success that he was having, I thought that was their identity on offense. And sure enough, when he was running, he was doing well, they were winning football games. As soon as he went down, which is unfortunate when anybody goes down, but that totally changed because they could not replace him. They didn't have another running back at the same skill set as he had, which forced them to really focus on Zach Wilson, which Zach Wilson, I think, if anything, he proved that he's really not a starting caliber quarterback. And I know they're kind of downplaying that right now with New York. You know, Coach Saleh is basically saying he'll get the opportunity to compete next year. I don't think the fans in New York want to see him starting a football game again. Mike Waite outplayed him. Actually, that last game of the season, I know we ended up seeing Joe Flacco, the Dolphins did. I was kind of hoping we were going to see Zach Wilson, because he just did not play very well, you know. So, but you're right. I think they're probably a quarterback away, and they've got the wide receiver, young wide receiver talent. That's very, very good, and their defense, I think, was very solid because of the draft. So, as long as the rest of those guys stay healthy, they just got to find a quarterback and they'll figure it out.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever been a greater story of one viral video of a quarterback throwing on the run back across his body deep that managed to get him drafted as high as he did. But that one pass seems to have created such hype that obviously got him drafted at that position. But that's it, isn't it? And I think obviously I can't see him. I think you can just see him dropping out of the league. You can't even see a team potentially picking him up as a backup now, from what we've seen.
Well, you know, Carolina Panthers like to pick up former first-round draft picks as backup quarterbacks. So you just never know, right? You never know. Yeah, who knows? He'll play football somewhere, I think. I'm sure.
So thinking of then, so obviously your season's not over. Our season's over, so we're already in the off-season. Your season's not over, but what do you think the priorities will be for, obviously, quarterbacks obviously going to be a big talking point, but what do you think the Dolphins' priorities will be to improve the team and move forward for next season?
I think a couple things. Number one, I said that Skyler was kind of interviewing for the backup job of the quarterback last week against the Jets, and I'm going to say that interview is going to continue this coming weekend. You know, and if he plays well, even if the Dolphins don't win, if he plays well, I think you've got someone who's developing, someone who could continue to develop, someone who wouldn't cost you a lot of money to be a backup quarterback. And I think you can let Teddy go, to be honest with you. But I think where the Dolphins will need to spend resources, pick up players with the few draft picks that they have is continually on the offensive line, because we still haven't quite figured that out. I think we're gonna need some defensive side help. You know, I don't think Byron Jones is going to be back next season. I feel like there's a rift with him in the organization, just with some of the things that the backfields coaches talked about. They said, you know, some guys can work through pain, you know, some guys will do it, and then some guys just won't, and then they haven't talked to him the last couple of weeks. So I kind of get the feeling that relationship has kind of gone sour. But also, I think we still need to figure out our linebacker spot. We really haven't had any consistent linebackers that, can consistently get to the quarterback or consistently cover, drop back in coverage. Jerome Baker, he's a good linebacker. It's just every once in a while you'll see him trailing a receiver as they're crossing the field, and he's just not able to keep up to him, or he didn't make the decision quick enough to go to that receiver. So I think on the defensive side of the ball, and then you've got to look at the safeties as well, because we've just been, again, if we can get some of these guys back from injury and they could be back to where they were pre-injury, I think the Dolphins will be okay. But if you find, I don't want to go into the season next year where you've got someone who's had surgery and they're like, they'll be back by the beginning of training camp, and then they never actually come back. Kind of like what we had with Byron Jones this year. We just can't afford to continue to do that. And then I did mention offensive line, didn't I? Yeah. We need to build that offensive. I'm going to say it a second time just because that's how important it is. Because that has made the difference. In all those games that that Tua was not in, I want to say the majority of them, Teron Armstead was not in those games either. So you take Teron Armstead out of the equation, that changes the complexity of that entire offensive line. They're not able to run as effectively as when he's in there. They're not able to get as much time for pass protection as when he's in there. So he's a big difference maker. We got to find guys that can be those difference makers.
And putting you on the spot now on the QB situation, if Tua decides to step away, or if the Dolphins decide to move on from Tua, what would you like to see the Dolphins do at the quarterback position?
If Tua's not there, I almost feel like you got to go get one of those veterans that we talked about, and if you can get Aaron Rodgers, see if you can get him, right? If you can get Tom Brady, even though I know people will probably crucify me for saying that, you can try, because here's the thing. I think our offense has a 2 to 3 season window where we've got the talent. We just need the quarterback to be able to utilize that talent. And if Tua is not the guy, if he's not healthy enough to do it, then we've got to find somebody who will be able to do it.
Yeah,
I see Blue Harvest toys.
Yes,
we just go, no,
definitely no. Anybody,
but
anybody but him.
And I know his name, and I don't say that like he's the all-in end all. All I'm saying is we have to get somebody who's going to be able to throw the ball to Tyreek, to Waddle, whoever our tight end is going to be, because I do not think Mike Gesicki is going to be back. But we have to find, if Tua's not the guy, we've got to find somebody who will be able to step in and do that right away.
Yeah, because next season, obviously, again with the Patriots, obviously in the off season, already was looking ahead of the fixtures and the schedule for next season. And obviously the AFC East is paired up with the AFC West, which is going to bring up some huge matchups, and which could have a big impact, obviously, on the playoffs next season as well. So it's some good games to look forward to as well there. So while I've got you on, you're a massive advocate of charity work, and you've done so much for the Dolphins community and things like that. Have you got something that you're working on at the moment that you'd like to talk about?
Yeah, and this is something that I work on probably 10 months out of the year, because that's when the campaign is running. But Dolphins Challenge Cancer is extremely important to me, as it is to, I know, a lot of other people. My mom was diagnosed with stage 4 breast cancer about 4 years ago, and ever since then it became more important to me. It's one of those things where it doesn't become important to you till it becomes important to you, and that's when it became really, really important to me. And fortunately, based on some of the research that has been done through the medicine that they've been able to develop, my mom's been able to what they call thrive, which is, she's been able to do well. She's been able to function as normal. She has some scares every once in a while, but she's able to live her life, which 4 years ago we weren't sure if that was going to be possible or not. So Dolphins Challenge Cancer, I do walk the 5K in February, every February. This will be my 3rd year that I've been part of it. And I'm just excited to be able to help, because all that money, the money raised, the proceeds go to the University of Miami Comprehensive Cancer Center. And it's helping to develop those drugs similar to what my mom is doing, or to help treat patients, that go to that facility. So That's an important one. And like I said, I don't think there's any adult on this planet that has not had a friend, family member, or colleague or someone that, that has not been affected by cancer in some way, shape, or form. So this really affects most of us.
And how, because I know that when we talked before the season that anybody in the world can get involved with that. So how would people go about getting involved if they'd like to donate?
So anyone can go to Dolphins Challenge Cancer. Actually, there's a couple of different ways that people can get involved. First way is that you can make a straight donation, right? And on my page, Ian693 on Twitter, I am obviously collecting for my walk, which I walk on behalf of everyone, people who donate, whoever it is. But also, there's another way that you could actually walk yourself, regardless of where you are in the world. And you could say, okay, on February 29th, I'm going to walk 5 miles and I'm going to raise money for Dolphins Challenge Cancer. And then you walk and you collect money and you have your own page on the Dolphins Challenge Cancer website, and you can collect and raise money on your own. So, there are many ways that you could do it. It's pretty amazing what they've done. And they continue to grow. And what I love too is that the Miami Dolphins organization, they are huge supporters of this initiative. And to the point where I think they've raised, I think they've raised over $60 million since they've started this, which is really, really impressive. It is the largest fundraising efforts in the entire National Football League, which is really great.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely fantastic. What I'll do is I'll put the link in the description to this video after this as well. So anybody that does watch this video wants to donate or get involved, then they can do as well. Talking about then as being obviously the Miami Dolphins Fan of the Year 2020, and obviously, are you friends with Dolph Freaky?
Yes, I see Ali at all of the home games and a lot of different events, and also the away games that I happen to go to. I'll see her there as well. She is a fantastic representative of the Miami Dolphins. I'm very proud of her, just like I was Mark Angelo last year when he earned it. I mean, these fans, and I think it's important to know that we're not the best fans in the National Football, or I'm sorry, we're not the best fans of the Miami Dolphins. I always say that there are hundreds of fans that collect more memorabilia than I do, that have more Miami Dolphins clothing than I do. There are fans that go to every home game like I do, but they also go to every away game, which I am not able to do that just yet. Some fans have been collecting memorabilia since the 1970s, and my memorabilia case is not even like 1% of what they have. So I will never, you'll never hear those words from me that I am the top Miami Dolphins fan. I'm just one of many people that try to spread positivity, that try and spread the Miami Dolphins love, and try and support the organization through the good times and the bad times. And unfortunately, it's been a lot of rough moments for us as I've been a Dolphins fan since 1985, but I'm still here, man. Still here, looking forward to a playoff game that we're picked to lose by 13 points. So that's what I do. That's what I do. That's what Ali does as well.
Yeah, that's fantastic. When do you find out about? Do you get invited to a thing? Is she getting invited to a thing and then finding out at that point about the NFL Fan of the Year from there?
Yeah, so we've been voting for Ali since they told us. I think it was back in November that they started this. But what's going to happen is right before the Super Bowl, which Ali's going to be going to, which is pretty amazing. She is going to the NFL Honors event where all of the selected NFL Fans of the Year will be attending, and that is where they announce who the Fan of the Year is for the entire National Football League. And there's nothing that I want to see more than Ali making it on that stage, because I want a Miami Dolphins representative to be number one for Fan of the Year. 2 years ago, the year that I did it, it was Brandon Galloway. He was with the Tennessee Titans. I still keep in touch with him. Super guy, super worthy of it. So I wasn't upset at all that I didn't get it. And then last year with Mark Angelo being there was a gentleman, his name escapes me, but he was with the Atlanta Falcons. He's the Atlanta Falcons Fan of the Year. He was the one who won it. So it's the Dolphins' time, and hopefully she'll be going to the NFL Honors the weekend before, or a couple days before the Miami Dolphins go to the Super Bowl. That's the goal. So she'll already be there. It'll be perfect.
And that's fantastic that they've extended it so much, because obviously when you were fan of the year, there's only a select few of you that got to go to the Super Bowl and those things, weren't there? So
yeah, it was only the top 3 that were allowed to go, and that was really mainly due to the COVID situation that was happening.
yeah,
Because remember too, when I went to that game, and I'm in Tampa right now, so it was Tampa versus Kansas City Chiefs here up in Tampa. There were 30,000 or 25,000 cardboard cutouts in the stands, and they only allow the top 3. Now with that group though, what they got to do that none of the other fans of the years have been able to do is they got to come back in Cleveland to the draft, and we got to announce a draft pick during that year's draft, and that was an experience I'll never forget too. That was insane.
Yeah, that's your pin video, isn't it, on your Twitter, isn't it? Yeah.
I keep thinking I need to change the pin video, but I was so proud of that moment. I was so happy, and it brings me such, like, I'll just be sitting at work one day and I'll look at my pin video and I'll listen to it again, because it just brings such happiness to me for that whole situation and what I was doing and where we were, and it was just so amazing.
No, that's absolutely brilliant. Just to have a look at in the comments, there's some nice things obviously said about you, and obviously thank you. Obviously appreciate you so much for coming on as well. So obviously Sally Kay saying looking good, Big E. So thank you very much for that, Sally.
Thank you.
We've got Mark. Hi, Big E. Great to hear from you. There's quite a lot of negativity out there about Skylar Thompson. So how do you think you perform on Sunday? So you just want to sum up again what you said about Skylar on Sunday.
Yeah, no, I think if they run the ball, if that's their game plan, and don't force Skylar to win it all himself, I think he'll do great. And I think too, there will be opportunities for him to throw that ball down the field, because that Tyreek Hill, he's the fastest guy on that field, whatever fields he's stepping on. I want to see something like that. I want to see a nice long play, but of course at the same time, I want us to be able to take as much time off the clock. But I think he'll do well. I think they're preparing him. This is his second week. He's growing in confidence. So we'll see what happens, but I'm excited.
Yeah. Who knows? It's as you said, it's a 1-game season now, isn't it? So
yep.
On any given Sunday.
It's true. And I've kind of saved all these people that have said you have no chance, especially the Bills fans. The Bills fans are like, you have no chance. Actually, one of their beat writers, or I think one of the guys that calls the games for the Buffalo Bills, he put out a tweet recently as something to the effect of, well, the NFL did give the Buffalo Bills a bye week. I'm like, okay. And I responded to that, and I said, I hope the Buffalo Bills are taking this game as lightly as this guy is, which I know they're not, but obviously you got a lot of people that are just so confident. And if there's a way that the Dolphins are able to pull that out, I might go and respond to everybody and just check on them and see how they're feeling after that game. No, I won't do that. But
you could just be silently smug, at least.
Yeah, I'll be so happy it's not even going to matter. Like I would be so happy it doesn't matter.
We've also got John said yes, obviously earlier in the chat. It's 11:04 over here, so let's go Finns, Big E. So thank you very, very much, John, for commenting. We've had obviously Blue Harvest Toys commenting throughout. Fins up, massive Dolphins fan as well. There it goes. Yeah, so a couple of comments that we've had. Eric's mentioned it and Andy's mentioned it as well. Is do you think the Damar Hamlin might affect this game? Obviously, when the Patriots played them last week, obviously the emotion was very high, and what didn't help is obviously the kick return on the first kickoff that went in, and all of a sudden somehow the noise got even louder after that. I don't know if they've got something planned. I don't know if Damar's able to do it, but you could just imagine if there's any way possible, they're going to have Damar leading the team out on Sunday, if that's all possible. So do you think that that's going to have an impact, or any impact on the game?
What's interesting is, first of all, I have to say that I'm so happy that Damar is where he is in his situation right now. And, I will never lie. I hate the Buffalo Bills. I usually dislike their fans, even though they have a lot of good fans. But when that happened with Damar, my thoughts, my prayers, the entire Miami Dolphins organization, all of our fans, we're praying for him to get better. And here's my honest opinion. I think the most emotion with Damar came last week against the Patriots. I think that was the height of it. And the reason why I say that is, he went from being unconscious in critical condition, not knowing if he was going to make it or not, to, being able to talk to people. So everybody kind of was able to take a sigh of relief, take a breath, and say, he's going to make it. He's going to be okay. And I think that emotion was what we saw on Sunday versus the Patriots. So if he comes out this coming weekend, I think it's going to be good. I think it's going to be helpful a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to be at the same level as it was against the Patriots.
Were you? Did you happen to be watching that game live, the Bills and Bengals? Because I did. That was one of those silly clock games over here.
That's right. Oh my God.
But yeah, unbelievable situation. One that I've never witnessed anything like that in any sports. For that sort of thing to happen.
So I was watching it and I knew something was wrong right away, because I saw one of the Bills players, the way that he was reacting before they went to commercial break, and I knew something was up. I took a video of it afterwards and I threw it online because I didn't know the severity of it, but I was just like, I hope, I pray that he's going to be okay. And then once I heard what the severity of was I removed the video out of respect to him, out of respect to the Bills organization, and then everything went to prayers. And then I was actually one of the first people to find DeMar's charity, and it took some research because most NFL players have like a website that you can go to or have something very specific, but it was a GoFundMe page that was open in 2020, I want to say, when he first entered the National Football League. But I verified that it was good through news sources. So I made a donation and then I shared it. When I made a donation, I think there was about $3,000 that had been donated, but that was mainly from the prior fundraising that he did. And then I just started watching. I shared it. People within, Miami Dolphins fans started donating, started sharing it as well. And I think last I saw it was up over $7 million that were raised. And I was so happy for him, so happy for the foundation, and like he said, never seen as much coming together as we saw with DeMar, not just in the NFL, but also kind of outside the NFL too, right? You saw like world leaders and other people that saw that and just like hoping that the guy was going to be okay.
Yeah, I was exactly the same. When I first saw the GoFundMe page, it was on $3,000. It was on $3,000, and then all of a sudden, by the end of the night, it was in the hundreds of thousands, and then obviously up to the millions. But as you said, the best thing that came out of that, obviously apart from DeMar's life himself, is how the love and all the community, not just the NFL community, but everyone came together to support that man, the family, the team, the whole Bills community, everybody all together, all under the same thing. So that was obviously the best thing to come out of it all. So, so just before we go, then, before we do finish, do you want to give us a score prediction for Sunday? Then, Big E, what we're saying?
I'm going to actually not give a score prediction.
Right.
And I usually don't do that. I usually am really good, but I am not going to give a score prediction because I think anything can happen. I think if I give a score prediction where the Bills are going to beat the Dolphins, then people are going to think I'm crazy because I'm saying that anything can happen. And if I give a prediction where the Dolphins are going to beat the Bills, people are going to think I'm crazy. So it's like a no-win situation. but who knows?
No, that's absolutely fair enough. If it was my team, then I'd probably be feeling the same. You just got to hope, haven't you? Just got to hope it's your day and things go your way. The ball bounces your way, a decision goes your way.
Yeah, and I'm putting together a little watch party close to my home where I've got about 30 Miami Dolphins fans that are come by, and we're going to be watching the game from start to finish. And you know what? We're going to have fun. We're going to continue on in the season and we're going to be ecstatic, or we're going to finish the season and we're going to be happy that we made it to the postseason. Either way, we're going to do it together as Dolphins fans, which I love.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely brilliant. And again, what I'd like to say to everybody that is watching, thank you very much for joining us, and for the people that have commented as well. Make sure that you do. I will put the Challenge Cancer link into the description as well. So if you do want to support that, please do. Also, make sure you do follow Big E on Twitter at Ian 693, isn't it? Ian 693 is along the bottom as well. Obviously, if you do follow Ian, all of his subscriptions on Twitter go towards that Challenge Cancer. That's right, isn't it? As well.
Yes,
so
sir.
If you do want to donate, you can donate through following on Twitter as well and subscribing on there as well. So again, thank you very much for that. From us, if you do not already, if you can hit that subscribe button, it really helps us out on our channel. We are also doing a live play-by-play reaction stream on Saturday night of the Seahawks and the 49ers. And then we're going to do the Sunday game of the Bills and the Dolphins as well. So we're watching those games very closely. And for you, Big E, we'll be keeping our fingers crossed for you and hoping that the Dolphins manage to pull off the shock there as well. So again, thank you so much for joining us and giving us your time, Ian.
I appreciate it very much, Tom. You get to sleep now because it's almost midnight where you are. So fins up, man.
I'll work very soon.
All right, buddy. Bye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
You.